Welcome to episode 18 of the DWRD Net stationary feed. Today's guest is one half of Papa J Studio, Luke Wiechman. Welcome, Luke, and thanks for taking some time to talk today. Go on and introduce yourself and just give a quick overview about yourself and Papa J Studio.
Sure. Hey, my name's Luke Wiechman. As was said, I'm half of Papa J. My wife, who is camera shy, her name's Christina, and you'll see I refer to her as Peanut a lot on the post. She is the other half of the company. So she's kind of the navigator and I'm the driver. So she does the bulk of our design, and I kind of do the execution of those designs, and our specialties are around florals specifically.
Very cool. And I'll have notes in the to the website and Instagram. But if you're not familiar with the Papa J Studio pins, definitely go look at the photos on Instagram, because the floral finials and the floral and just all of the above, you're probably gonna end up buying something. Just be forewarned, but it'll catch you off guard with how cool the stuff looks. So let's get started with kind of our level setting questions that I ask of all the guests. So to start off, what do you currently have inked? What have you been writing with lately?
So I love maker pens. My most current is this TriStar Studio that I picked up from Scott in at the St. Louis show. So it's just beautiful resin with some nickel bands, and I can't remember the wood, but he lasered his logo in it, which I think is just a killer addition to that. So this is kind of my everyday driver right now, and some of my other favorites are like I love my Tellos with the Venetian glass finials, and then I'm also rolling with a Mayfair over here and a Mad Science Ghost pen that he did for a Halloween drop as well. And those are kind of what I'm using in my daily rotation.
No, very cool, especially the TriStar, because you might not be aware of this, but this is actually the first pin that Scott ever engraved the logo on. He
Okay.
brought it to a local meetup, and I was like, I want that one. So he
Yep.
wasn't even planning on selling it that day, so I bought it essentially almost out of his pocket, because he had just done it like either that morning or the night before. So great stuff from Scott. And all those makers you mentioned. I only own one of the TriStar so far, but I know the rest at some point are going to end up in the collection. So if
Yeah.
money was no budget, what would you say would be your grail pen? Would it be a maker pen, or are there any of those like unicorn production pens out there that might take that bill?
So I would love to get someday, um, something that I make and then I send off to Sophia at Urushi Notes. So she's made some just insane stuff. She made one particular one with Lily of the Valley with a big moon behind it that I thought was absolutely stellar. And pretty much anything she churns out with those flowers and stuff that she's putting on them, or that someday that will happen. But that's kind of probably will be one of my only big pen purchases is something from her.
No, and I love that answer, because that's the first person who's, especially of the makers, they want one of their pens Urushi'd. So I love that, because the Urushi artistry, it's a whole nother level of, it's its own discipline, and just combining two craftsmen's work together is always cool to me.
Yeah.
So in your pens, what about inks? What are your general preferences? Do you stick with the same, tried and true, or do you like to experiment with new colors and brands as they come across, as you come across them?
So I'm a very pragmatic user. I stick with diamine a lot just because my main purpose for using inks are to write thank you letters to customers. So I try to just go out and get a good cross section of colors that match kind of the resins that I'm pouring for the pens I'm making, and trying to send out samples that might work well with what I'm sending out. But that
No,
would
and that,
be,
yeah,
yeah,
that's a good one.
mostly diamine. But I did buy the new Amarillo set with like orange kicks and teal waistband. He had 4 colors. Eric's a great guy, and those inks are really awesome. So I bought that set as well.
No, I love Orange Kicks. That's probably one of my favorite inks right now. I have it in the Amarillo pen that he released.
Yep.
And Eric was great to interview as well. I'll put a link to that in the notes, because just the color palette and everything about that. Those quickly became some of my probably favorite ink purchases of 2025 so far.
Yeah, that's what I have in this Tello. You can see that little orange ink window. So yeah, that's what I'm running in that one.
Very nice. So pens and inks, we've covered that. What about paper? What kind of papers do you like to write on?
So again, pragmatism. I don't know how I discovered this. Somebody, not a journaling person or a stationary person, bought me this notebook. Um, and I had it sitting here, and it's actually Pen and Gear from Walmart. Pen and Gear brand. It's like a $5 notebook. This thing is surprisingly fountain pen friendly. So I use that a lot. I like the Rhodia dot book. I use that one from time to time in various sizes. And then I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but I believe I was up at Atlas this weekend and I did a writing test with some Leonardo's, and they had this Nemosine paper. Nemosine. Okay. So I got the 165 paper and an A5 booklet just because I loved it. Almost has a rubbery. I don't know if rubbery is the right.
It's
I
a
don't know.
coated. Nemesine is a coated paper, so it's got this smoothness to it.
Yeah,
I'm a big Nemesine fan. I really love how it performs, and it handles ink like a champ,
yeah.
regardless of the nib you're throwing at it.
I looked at it. I took a picture of it, and I walked straight over and bought two of them because I think I'm going to switch from that blue Pen and Gear to this notebook for customer thank yous, just because the tactile feedback when you were writing was so nice.
Yeah, the Nemesine, and if you like grid paper, I'm a dot grid, but if I'm not dot grid, there's actually a special edition of Nemesine by Clyde. Has like an
Okay.
olive green cover, and it's a 2 millimeter grid. So
Okay.
if you like kind of a small grid, that's another option to look for in the future as well.
Gotcha.
So the last of my kind of level setting questions, and it's one of my favorites. What is your favorite stationary adjacent item? Be it a case, a bag, a book weight, something that's not pen, paper, ink that you find yourself using all the time.
So I actually have two because I can't decide. So I went to the Chicago Pen Show and I was a vendor there. But the first day they had the like trading or the trader only pass Thursday. So I got in Thursday afternoon and I went to a table and there was a fella there with some Urushi pens and some trays. On Instagram, he's SEY underscore Urushi pen, I believe is his Instagram name. But he had these trays and I had just walked in the door. So I wasn't quite ready to purchase. And by the time I made it back to him, the tray I wanted had sold. But it worked out because I found his website and I was actually able to pick my own custom material. And then I just got this plain old lacquered frame, which I actually preferred over the first one I saw. But this thing is absolutely gorgeous. It's a nice way to keep it on the desk, and keep my pens in there. And also beautiful for I'm going to be using it for staging photos a lot. So
Nice.
I love this thing. I'll probably be getting more from him. The miters are nice and tight. I'm a former woodworker before I started on pens. So it's a beautiful box and it's beautifully lined. So he killed it on this. And it smelled like lacquer when I opened up the box. I got that initial woof of lacquer that hit my face, which I quite enjoyed. Um, my other one is my Amarillo rickshaw. I love Eric's logos. I love his branding, the brightness of his designs and stuff. And of course, it's nice how it keeps everything. The inside of these rickshaws are so soft. They're great products. So I carry this with me quite a bit.
I can fully appreciate. I've got the 3 pin to go in my Pen Addict Sinclair. So big rickshaw fan here. And I think your episode 18, I think of the 18 episodes so far, probably 15 have mentioned rickshaw in some way or another. So that definitely shows when you're in the pen world, it's
Yes.
kind of become one of the go-to
Yeah.
accessory items, you might
And
say.
Mark is a great guy. I worked with him to have some custom sleeves made for the Chicago Pen Show, and he went above and beyond to make it happen. So yeah, he was awesome customer service as well.
No, very cool. So let's move on to the good stuff. let's talk about Papa J Studio. And just to start off, tell us how the name Papa J Studio came to be.
Yeah, so Papa J Studio actually came, it's kind of an homage to my father-in-law, Jerry, who we lost in 2020 unexpectedly. Um, so he was very active in the recovery community, and he had been sober around 40 years by the time he passed away. But he used kind of his gifts and his station in life to help other folks that needed help with that in that respect. So that's how Papa J came about, with kind of the theme around that being, I take money every quarter and I donate it somewhere from our profits. So it was kind of just, using his moniker. And I really looked up to him. He was my dad. My real dad isn't my dad. I consider my father-in-law my dad. So it was kind of just a way to pay tribute and respect to him, and for people to hear about how great of a guy he was and how helpful he was. So
That's very cool to be able to pay it forward and, honor, even though he's passed, his name lives on with how many people now are walking around with a pin named after him, from your company. That's really cool for that to be able to carry on. So, you know, what when did you get into pins and stationery? You mentioned you're a woodworker. Did the woodworking lead into the pins and stationery, or did the pins and stationery, was it already kind of there in the background? Even before you kind of turned the business in that direction.
yeah, so I started out. I joked that I'm a former woodworker. I still possess the skill, and from time to time I still do it. But Papa J Studio actually started as Papa J Woodworks. So Um, I made a lot of like 3D cutting boards, end grain stuff, charcuterie boards, some light furniture, coasters, um, and I was kind of selling that stuff off. And then I went out to my uncle Daryl's house, my Peanuts uncle Daryl, and he had a wooden pen. And he said, "Look what I made!" And I at this time I had never worked on a lathe, and I was like, "Well, how in the world did you make a wooden pen?" And he's like, "Oh, well, come here and I'll show you." And we drove back to his shed on the back of his property, and he had me pick out some wood and a slimline kit, and we made a pen right there. And then he sent me home actually with tooling and a lathe and a bunch of blanks and some slimline kits and some friction polish, and gave me a list of, here's the other thing you need, this mandrel, blah blah blah. And I brought it home, and it sat for a couple years, and I continued to do like the flat work. um, and then on Christmas Eve of 2023, I don't know what possessed me to plug in this old lathe, and I tried to remember as best I could from a couple years back when I worked with him. Chucked it up and made my first pen on my own, which was comically bad. But you got to be willing to suck at something to be good at something. So I still have the pen sitting around here, and I never fixed it. But it's pretty funny to look at now. But that was kind of the start, was him showing me a pen, and I was enthralled with like, whoa, he made that square thing round. And so my uncle Daryl was really the first, like he introduced me to pens. So pen making is what got me into pens and stationery.
Awesome. I think you should take that original pin now that you're into the blanks and whatnot, and just encase it in like clear resin, polish
There
it
you
up,
go.
and have it kind of sitting there as like a trophy piece. I think that'd be a cool way to always have it, have a place of honor. That'd be just a neat. It'd be, if nothing else, a great conversation piece to have on your table. It shows, yep,
Yeah.
this is what started it all right here.
Yep. Yep. I actually wanted to fix it, and Peanut said, leave it alone. Like it'd be cool to see where you've been, or where you started and where you're going to go. So I never fixed it, and I just kind of moved on and started making stuff for her. So
So you started making pins. Were you still doing your cutting boards and your other wood? Like, was there a point in time where you're like doing both and you realized the pins had more, either you enjoyed it more, it was more a better way to grow the business? How did that kind of come to be?
yeah. So for me, um, the business aspect of all of this honestly is secondary, right? So kind of the things that make me as a person is, like, I need mental stimulation, I need physical exercise, I need family and friend time, and then I need to be creative. So kind of those four pillars are how I remain a happy human being, right? So that it started just as a fun project, and then some friends wanted to buy some stuff, so then I kind of put the name to it, and I was doing mostly cutting boards until I turned that first pen, and then from like that Christmas Eve of 2023 through Christmas of 2024, I turned about 400 items. And I stopped doing flat work pretty much right away. I did some projects throughout the year, but I made and sold about 400 items, and it turned into, you know, kit pens, anything with a kit, letter openers, pizza cutters, ice cream scoops, bottle stoppers, bottle openers. So yeah, it was pretty much like an immediate obsession with turning as soon as I started doing it, and it was almost exclusively wood for probably the first 4 or 5 months before I started switching into and trying some resins and acrylics and stuff like that.
So you went through all the selection of kits, started with wood, moved into the resins. When did you make the big leap into your first three piece or your first non kit pen? How did that transition come to be?
Yeah, so the first maker made fountain pen I ever saw on Instagram was by a fella named Adolphus from Derail's Pens. And I think it was soapstone or something. And I thought it was just so cool. Like, I'm like, how is he threading it? Where are those threads? Like, did he make those threads? And then I started kind of unpeeling that and unwrapping that and started finding other makers. But I had kind of gone as far as I could go with the kit stuff because it's like I wasn't pouring my own material at that time. So you pick a blank someone else made. You're constrained by the kit that you're purchasing. Um, and actually, by happenstance, Scott from TriStar, I posted a lathe on a Facebook group that I had just purchased. And he reached out to me and said, "Hey, what do you think of that lathe?" And we started chit chatting. And it kind of just transpired from there. And Scott was actually the guy that roped me into all of this. So Scott has been a fantastic mentor. He actually made me this pen. So he gave me a list of all the tools that were needed to do a fountain pen, and then painstakingly put up with a billion questions over the about 3 month time I was purchasing all the tools and stuff to do this. And then he put together a little care package and sent me this pen so I'd have something to model my first pen off of. So I could kind of get a look and feel for what size is the cap, how long is the body, what do these threads look like, how does it fit together. So that's how I actually got started. Was I mentioned I wanted to get into that, and he was like, "Oh, I just started making custom fountain pens myself." So I think it was kind of a cool exercise for him too to kind of flex on his own what he knew, because Nick Pasquale is the one that got him into it. So
Oh, and I was just gonna say, having interviewed Nick and Scott before, it's kind of cool to now you be third in the line because in the order that they happen to be in the interviews, going through them, I've heard Nick talk about, oh yeah, I helped Scott, and then Scott. Now it's the third level,
yeah,
makers helping makers because the community as a whole, I'm sure there's special cases that don't fit this. They want to help other makers and encourage, and you're not competition, you're counterparts.
right,
Because most of the pin buyers and consumers, they're not going to be like, "Oh, I only want one of Papa J." They want one of everybody's. It's
right,
just
right.
time and money that is the constraint in what they go. So that's just kind of cool. That kind of pay it forward, mentality, and getting to talk to all three of you to kind of see how that's progressed. Because now all three of you are turning out awesome things, and it's
Yeah.
all just helping each other out, which is really cool.
So it's kind of like what's the saying? Something like a rising tide floats all ships or something like that. So Yeah, I've found my experience in the maker community to be the same. I think so long as you're kind of guiding yourself by the tenets of uh, novelty and creativity and having integrity in your design and being original, that for a lot of makers, it's like the skill set is there. We're going to teach you how to do the skills. And they're not worried about you being their competition, because as long as you're adhering to those kind of tenets, core tenets of trying to do your own thing and, being original, I've not had many people, turn me away when I did have questions. And in fact, it's been quite the obvious, like, or the opposite is like, no, I invite you to ask me more questions. So that's been my experience with, like, Scott and Nick are two of my big mentors, and then my other uh, is Rob Sanchez. So those three have kind of been the trifecta who have taken a vested interest in my success and kind of seeing where we're trying to take this from an artistic level and really helping me out. And they've all played a big role in kind of the quality of the florals that we're churning out in one way or another.
No, that's really cool. So, you got the kind of mentorship going through. When did the idea of pouring your own blanks come to be? How long has that been a thing for Papa J?
Yeah, so let's see. So I made my first uh, custom pen around Christmas of 2024. And then I want to say like uh, January of this is 25. No, January of 2024 is like I have my timeline off. So January 24 was when I first started pouring, and I made the fountain pen, a month before that. So that kind of came about as like I had been commissioning some people to make custom blanks for me, and I kind of started thinking, if I have all these, well, I say I, Christina, my wife, Peanut, she has all these design ideas. Why am I paying someone else to pour these blanks when we could probably pour them? So that's kind of how it started. Was she had these ideas about things she wasn't seeing uh, from the materials I had in my bins that she wanted to see, which were, a lot more muted tones, a lot softer, more delicate colors, very feminine. Um, so that's kind of how it started, was her saying, well, what if we, find something that's blah, this, and this. And I'd go out and look, and somebody would make something, and, it hit the mark most of the time. But that feedback loop of her being over my shoulder saying, no, that's too pink, or no, it needs less gold. Okay, cool. We'll mix up more. We'll pour another batch. So that's kind of how that started, was her desire to see some different options than what I had.
No, I like that because it's like you were talking about with the pen makers. The makers, you kind of each find your own niche, your own designs, and that really holds true for blanks as well. Having talked to a couple of people who pour blanks, they don't make pens. They each kind of approach it in a different way. Either, I've talked to Chad from Elon Anchor or Lisa Marie of Poorly Controlled. Everybody approaches it a little bit different, and having been to Nick's shop and seen him pour some blanks, it's that's a whole nother level of creativity as well. Kind of like we were talking earlier about Arushi work.
Yeah.
You can come up with color patterns, or you can come up with ideas and designs. But one thing that I think, if I were to tell pen people Papa J Studio, the thing that comes to mind for me is the floral finials. And I don't want you to give away any trade secrets, but was Kristen the driving force behind um, the finials, or how did that come to be? Because those are so unique and so beautiful, and they really just take the pins to a whole nother level.
Yeah. So that idea originated for us in like last April of 2024. And I had greatly admired John Tello's pens, and what he was doing the Venetian glass, of course, his stuff is amazing. That, along with, I was buying her a lot of dried floral jewelry. And it just, we were sitting there one night and I looked over and she turned her head and I saw her earring and I was like, huh, because it was a circular earring. And I was like, I bet you we could make and put flowers in the finials. Because at that point I was looking to expand it into a different offering beyond the floral body because the floral body pens were, man, those were a pretty steep hill to climb. I was pouring my own, so just the skill level, I think I was probably I didn't know how big of a deal it was to do it right. So it was a lot of work when I first started doing those, and I had like 6 to 7 hours in each floral body pen. So I was looking for something that I could provide at a lower price point and maybe provide at a, keep the quality there, but provide more of them. And that's really where it came from, was a marriage of like my love affair with John Tello's Venetian glass finials and I guess you could say our love affair with kind of the dried floral jewelry that I had been buying for her and for, our mothers.
No,
And
that's seeing pictures of that, and once again, be sure and go look at the Papa J Instagram. It's it's like its own artwork. I mean, knowing now that because it does kind of look like jewelry. It looks like jewelry on the end of a pen, which makes perfect sense hearing kind of how it came to be because it's a whole different look
yeah,
and it's just so unique and it looks like you're able to even customize the finial to the material you're turning. So you're making the pen and you're able to make the finial just be that perfect icing on top of the cake just to complete it and take it to that next level, which I think is awesome. Just how that comes out when it's a finished product.
yeah. So Peanut and I have this kind of this symbiotic relationship in regards to pen making and design. So she actually makes like 99% of those floral finials. So if you see something really simple, I think I've probably done five or less of the floral finials in the last year. I did the OG, the very first one. It was black with a gold ring and just a white little mum in it, which was, it looked pretty dope. But um, she's doing all of that. So really, it's this kind of symbiotic thing of she's designing the companion materials, the resins that we're pouring. So like our two signature lines right now are the mermaid line and the gilded line, and kind of the hallmarks of those are like glitter veins, mostly gold, and then gold foil, and lots of pearls and stuff, pearl colors in those. And of course, that kind of signature peanut look of very low key, not too bright, not too contrasting. And then doing the clear, kind of a clear lid has become one of my favorite things. Is I'm a glutton for punishment and I like the internal polishing. So she kind of will, she kind of just looks at what she has at her disposal on these floral finials and kind of layers in the flowers there and maybe some other little goodies, foils or glitters or something. And yeah, it's crazy because she always says, oh, I'm not doing anything. I'm not doing anything. And I'm like, that I could just make pens, right? But it's undeniable her kind of influence over the aesthetic that's occurring. And I think it's a huge reason for the amount of success we've had thus far. It's awesome to do something that we kind of came up with. We stumbled into it. We didn't know the industry. We didn't do an industry study. We didn't realize that there was maybe a gap in the industry around the type of material that she wanted to be created. Um, and it turns out there was, and it's really resonated with people. So it's been awesome that it's not like a contrived design decision to what can I make that's going to sell versus we love this, we're putting our heart and soul into it, uh, we would make it, for us, and it tends to be resonating with people. So yeah, she does a fantastic job. I wish she weren't so camera shy and she were here with me, but she said, "The interview's all yours, buddy."
No, I mean it. That's great that you're able to do that. As a family business, you're able to, maybe you turning the pins, but the design and the colors. That's really what draws people in. It's the look and the material and the presentation that sells it.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
if you
and
like we were
it's
talking about pins, when you really boil it down, it's a cylinder that makes marks on paper.
yep,
It's the look that determines when that person walks up at a show and sees it, they're like, "Well, that's the one.
yep,
Take my money. That's coming
yeah,
home with me." That really comes across. Now, since you're pouring resins, it looks like you still might be doing resins because I think I saw some of the what looked like the striped resins, the sushi resins from Daryl. Are you?
yeah,
Am I correct on that? That looks like his kind of signature pour. So that
yes,
how much are you doing of your own material versus seeking out some of that? Because he kind of that was kind of his specialty. The kind of layered. So how
right.
do you kind of factor that in of your own pours versus loving other makers' designs and being able to make a product you can sell out of another maker's blanks? How do you float that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we ever intended to make as many blanks or the variety. Real blank makers are going to laugh. I'm not actually a blank maker. I'll stick by that. But I don't think we ever intended to do as many of our own as we have. So I would say it's probably like 90-10 our stuff to other people's stuff. But, like I met Daryl in Chicago and I walked by and I had seen his striped blanks online before, but I don't know why it didn't resonate with me. But when I saw them in person, I was captivated. They were so cool. Um, and so I purchased those from him in Chicago, and I have a box sitting out on my front porch I need to open today. He sent me more stuff, but yeah, it's more like 90-10, and I'm kind of judicious about what I'm using. I love storm winds a lot. Of course, I don't use Jonathan Brooks's stuff. Is not like I stick to a lot of pastels and whatnot and lighter, less contrasting stuff, but he's Jonathan Brooks, right? So I love his warm and cool tone resins, um, and I've used those in our floral finial models. Hollow Creek Craftsman and Chad from Eel and Anchor both make really awesome stuff that I've used. But those are kind of the mainstays of other makers' materials. Those are the ones that come to mind that I've done drops of recently. Are kind of those folks there.
No, and I like that because you know it's interesting to see what different makers do with a very similar material. That's because think about I'm sure there's some people out there who, regardless of what maker makes something, if that's their material that they see that material, they want a pin of every single maker regardless because they just love the material. And to
Right.
be able to have a tray of 10 slot tray with 10 different interpretations of how that material should be made, that's kind of a
Right.
cool thing when you really think about it. Because like I have up on my other screen over here one of your Blue Horizons out of the one of Daryl's blanks. Because having met Daryl, I wasn't familiar with him,
Yeah.
and then now that I own one of his pins, and I've been out to Arkansas to one of the pin club meetings and got to hang out with him and see some more materials and things like that, it's just neat. And I also love that, a lot of the pen makers that I've talked to so far, they've only been doing it a couple of years.
Yeah.
So the whole community is kind of growing together,
Hmm.
and, which is great. It, like you said, rising tide raises all ships. And that's just kind of cool to see the whole community growing and the hobby growing as a whole, and all of you contributing to that fact.
Yeah.
So, when did you make the move into actually doing pin shows?
I decided to do the Chicago Pen Show because that was a local show. I never really intended to do pen shows, I don't think. just because I do find posting them on my website and doing drops. But I talked to some folks and they said, no, it's great to meet people. It's great to network. It's great to get your face out there. It's a completely different crowd of people. So I decided to do the Chicago Pen Show, and I got a table late. So I think I was 5 weeks out from the show. So that was the first one I did. And that was a really cool experience. It was a fantastic show. Very gracious, customers, giving us a big head. And it was kind of cool. The first day there was folks lined up on either side of the aisle waiting for the pen show to open, and I kind of got ganked first thing on Friday morning, which was fun. Having a group of people kind of fighting over your wares. So that was my first one. But I'll probably do more. I went to St. Louis just to meet up with Scott. I hadn't seen him in a year, so I went down there as a spectator and hung out and bugged Logan and him and Kirk from Pen Realm and Eric, of course, from Amarillo. But yeah, I think next year will probably be Chicago again, and then I'll probably vend at St. Louis, but I may go to San Francisco because I would love to meet up with Rob Sanchez in person. So we may head out to San Francisco just to attend as spectators this year.
Yeah, that seems like, because I've never been to one of the big ones. I haven't been to DC or San Francisco, and the scale of that versus the smaller shows, from the way everybody describes it, it's like a whole different beast. So I
Yeah,
could definitely see going once as a spectator, a shopper, a consumer, to see if that's one of those beasts you want to take on. Is that a 1 year out or a 3 year out, just to get that kind of scale? One, logistics of getting product out there, but two, you know, dealing with that different type of customer and volume of customers over that long weekend.
yeah,
Um, I would definitely say you'd have to have a lot more product with you to be
yes,
able to account for that kind of crowd.
yeah, for sure.
And
I think we took 70 to Chicago and sold, I want to say 57 of them or something like that. And I heard it's not nearly as large as it is in like DC or San Francisco. So that would take quite a bit of planning ahead to do that type of volume, especially with the floral body pens, because those take quite a while to do. So
yeah, I love pin shows because the part I love about it the most is, yes, you get to see stuff, but you
yeah,
get to meet the people, you get to network, you get to hang out with them at the restaurant or the bar afterwards and just kind of talk through the hobby, where because the consumer part that comes into play, but it's the getting to use the stuff and hang out and showing the cool stuff that you have that they've never seen, or they get to try your stuff out. Because if
yeah,
nothing else, it lets you know, oh, I need to go look up this person on their Instagram. I need
mm-hmm.
to go look up at their website and see get on their newsletter, so when they're releasing more, I know,
Right, yeah,
or I want to get on the commission list because I want this maker to make that same pin I saw that so and so has out of that
right,
same material. I want a pin twin type thing. So it's kind of neat how that grows. So moving forward, you mentioned Logan, and I just had him as the last guest, so I'll put a link to that. But he was talking about how 3D printing, he was already in the designing and modeling phase, and he had talked to you, and now you're able to make, for the blank pouring, one of his stands and some of the other things. So talk about just 3D printing. How is that? I mean, I know you're relatively new in the larger scale of the pen world, but
yeah,
in the short time of the 3D printing, how has that helped grow your business and like advance it forward?
yeah. So um, I am not a designer. I can't do CAD. Those are services I pay for. But I actually worked with my buddy Kyron, who owns a motorcycle business, and he designed this pen stand for me. Um, so he created the blank out of this, and that was kind of I can't remember when we started this, but that was my first foray into this. Right, was telling him what I wanted to do. He 3D modeled it for me, and at the time I didn't have a 3D printer, but he was able to 3D print a version of this. so we could see how we liked it, right? So that was kind of the first utility. The really first super useful thing I saw was he uses it in his motorcycle business to quickly prototype. And he fits parts up on Harleys, bolt alignment, how do the parts fit in there. So I started thinking through how we could use it in our business, and we ended up sending this off and getting it crafted in aluminum, and then I sent it over to Olive Frog Designs, and she made me a bunch of really nice molds, so I can start pouring these floral pen rests. That was the first one. I didn't have my printer at the time. The second one was I bought a lathe, and the lathe, if you can believe it, I spent $5,000 on this lathe, and they didn't have a direct fit collet chuck. So you had to kind of like machine your own back so you could fit a collet chuck on it. And there were no really great options. So again, I worked with Kyron, my buddy that owns the business, and he designed a collet chuck. And then I found a couple other fellas that had this same lathe, and we were able to again quickly rapid prototype, fit everything up, and I was able to test it. And then we sent it off to get manufactured. And then a couple other fellas like John Tello bought one for his lathe. Um, so after that, I was like, I'm going to get my own because I'm seeing how useful this can be. And since then, Rob Sanchez, he designed some pen holders for me so I could display the floral finials, more prominently at the Chicago Pen Show. So he designed those up for me and then sent them to me. Got those printed. Those have been awesome. And then you talked about Logan. Logan's making those. That's probably like I'm like the church of Logan from Little Hollow right now. People are probably sick of hearing me talk about this stand, but I've had to scale my blank operations recently, and as a result of that, I've had to learn how to pour more at a time. And his design I actually just spent $135 on a pot rack that's now sitting there unused because his design is so perfect. So I've printed a bunch of those. I've printed a bunch for other people. I was able to have him, he designs his stuff with a parametric file. So he's able to resize things. So he's made shorter ones. Nick plans on doing some shorter pours. So it's awesome to be able to just, I paid Logan for the design, and he's been kind enough to kind of change some things here and there and to say, hey, can the holes be 29 millimeter instead of 23? And he's, yep, sends it back. I click print, it prints, I assemble it, perfect. And then, pour in my own like plug molds, the mold to make plugs for these tubes. Jonathan Brooks was kind enough to help me out with that. That's again not anything I designed. I just printed it. But I'm sitting on a file for a new model that I teased a long time ago, and I've not done a production model of it. But I have a roll stop that I've worked with Rob Sanchez. So it's not focusing well, but he drew a roll stop for me. So I need to get it 3D printed so I can actually start going to production with my floral roll stops. And that will kind of become another signature along with the floral finial and the floral body, floral pen rests. If you're seeing a theme here, we love flowers. So just trying to think of more useful ways to expand those. And 3D printing has actually been a big part of that. Here I have adjustable walls to build mold boxes because I needed to pour some molds for a collab I have coming up. So it's amazing how quickly you can get to market and just conceptualize an idea to have a physical product with a 3D printer and with people that actually know how to 3D design, which I don't.
No, and that's one thing I love. I've had to. It's taken a lot of self restraint to not buy a 3D printer because I know myself. I
Yeah.
would be printing everything. I would
Yeah.
be. I'm not a designer as well. I would figure it out until it would function, but it wouldn't be pretty.
Yeah.
But the ability for you to say, "Hey, I need this adjusted," and Logan makes a couple of changes and sends you a file, and you're able to print it. I
Yeah.
mean, just the ability to quickly adapt or make parts, like you said, making a part for the lathe that you were able to take and actually get sent out to make as production parts, that rapid prototyping aspect, it
Yep.
lets you try new things in this hobby, in your business. And if it doesn't work, you're at a little bit of filament, and then you go on to the next idea to how to make it work.
Yeah.
And that's just neat. And I've seen the pin stand because in Nick's shop, he had the one because he pours in metal
Mhm.
tubes so he can do the curing and whatnot. And he's like, "Oh yeah, this is perfect. It fits right in the pressure pot, and it holds everything up, and you can adapt it. So if you're doing shorter, or doing longer,
Yeah.
doing custom, you can really customize. So you're not trying to make something that would work, but it might have extra waste or extra something that you don't want to deal with.
Yeah.
You can really, customize that to your need." So you mentioned earlier you have two main pin models. Is that something, as you're adding in these other kind of side products, the roll stops, the stands, do you have, you know, other models that you're playing around with aside from the side things, or are you mainly sticking with your main two and doing different materials and variations on those? Or what's your general approach to that? If you know you're sitting around the table and you get an idea, and then the two of you get together and say, let's try doing this, something that we haven't seen before, or we want to do our own take on something we have seen and make it ours.
Yeah. Yeah. So in regards to models, that's kind of my what I deal with is like the shape and how to make it. But as you can see, there's not a great variety in models because, and that's kind of been on purpose because I really want the flowers to be the showpiece of the. I want it to be the emphasis of the pen, right? So I do have plans to do a pocket pen. I've been working through a couple designs. Um, so I think I have something that's workable. Um, and another thing I want to work on is some type of like something a floral you can eyedropper. So whoever has my florals, don't eyedropper those. I'm afraid it'll hurt the flowers. So, but I'm working on ideas to. A lot of people have asked, "Can I eyedropper this?" And I'm like, "Please don't." And that's an option I'd like to provide to people. So I would say the next big things are getting the floral roll stop to production, and then I'd love to work on my spin on a pocket pen.
No,
And
very cool.
that'll center around like florals, of course.
Well, I would have guessed that just based off the theme, but that'll be cool to see. Pocket pins seem to be everywhere right now, and it's neat to see you know what everybody's doing with them.
Yeah.
I'm not the biggest pocket pin person, but I love looking at them, but
Hmm.
I don't write well with them. But it
Yeah.
doesn't mean I'm still not going to buy some here or there just because they look so daggum cool
Yes.
that I want it sitting in the pin tray, even if it's just going to be, oh, I don't need to write pages with this. I can write down a to-do list item. I can do that with a pocket pen.
Right.
And I've got other pens. If I need to write longer, I'll pick another pen off the rack.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. Because, like you said, the I don't know one of the tellos, but those finials that he does, it's kind of like yours. They're just unique, and it catches your eye, and you're like, I can't stop looking at it.
Yeah.
It's just so cool.
Yeah. They're
You know,
amazing. I got my lathe. This is high praise for John because I got my lathe. Um, and it's a lathe. It's a $5,000 lathe, right? It's awesome. But the same day I got my one of my tellos, my first one, and I had actually reached out to him to let him know that he was a big inspiration behind our floral finial, and he actually gifted me a pen, which was completely unexpected, and I was blown away. So I actually didn't get my lathe set up because I was sitting in my shop staring at this finial and just staring at just the cleanliness of his threading and the accent piece and the ink window and just the threading on the back of it and just the way it all goes together. It's like, damn, I have some stuff to learn. I mean, my pens are pretty good, but Um, these tellos are next level on fit and finish. So
No,
yeah,
and
they're
that
awesome.
is high
You should get one.
praise. You have the brand new lathe sitting there, and it's sitting over on the side, and you're sitting here like, man, this is a cool looking
Like,
pin.
this is so cool. I can't even believe I have one of these. Yeah, it was cool.
That's very cool. So, as we're kind of starting to wrap up here, I only have one question left, and it's the final question I ask everybody. What's next for Papa J Studio? I know you've already kind of touched on some of that, but overall, adding your roll stop into production, pocket pin in the future, anything else that you have on the short or long term roadmap that you can think of right now?
Yeah, keep your eyes out in late 25 or 26. I have some collabs coming up that I can't quite divulge yet. Also, Pasquale is taking over my shop next weekend, so he and I are going to be doing a fun collab that I think is going to be pretty interesting. Uh, so that'll be cool. But yeah, I mean, just that stuff and whatever else pops into my head. I've been getting some more goodies to see how they work inside of pens, and we'll see where it goes. You fail a lot, but sometimes you have a winner. So
Oh, and you're not going to be able to innovate unless you have failures along the way. So, you have to keep striving for the innovation, and the sky's the limit because you might find a whole new way of doing a floral finial that just takes it to a completely different way that you just don't know even exists yet. So,
yeah,
you
yep,
know, that'll be really cool to see. But you know, thanks for taking some time tonight. I really appreciate it. And maybe sometime in the future we'll have you back and we'll get both parts of Papa J Studio, for round two in the future,
yeah, that's awesome.
just to kind of talk about the whole business as a whole. But if you're new to listening to the show, don't forget we are available on Apple Podcast and Spotify. But for video is the best way. So as people are holding things up, like Luke holding up some of his pins and his designs, you can see that on the YouTube video version. So until next time, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you on the next episode.